the idea was they had to be able to hold their head up, and they had to be able to be well supported in a good bike seat. We bought a bike seat that was one that we would support his head, although they tend to fall asleep in the bike anyway. Had the little helmet, and then it was on the back of the sit-up bike that I'd seat where it was easily transferred. So it meant that my husband could sometimes take the baby or, you know, the little one, whoever it was, out on the bike as well. And it went from 9 months all the way through until when they were really ready to sit on their own bikes. So I think one of the last times I remember using it, the same bike seat, was we had a little 9-month-old in, was we went on holiday and we cycled a family route around the Isle of Wight. But at that stage, our youngest, our daughter, was pretty big, and I definitely remember swapping her over from one bike to the other because I think I got a bit tired. My husband thing to do.
Yeah, we used a child seat for one, but we also had a trailer bike that fastened onto the back of one of our bikes, so they had a single wheel and a set of pedals and handlebars, and literally pedalled away or not. Yeah, that's it. Tag along.
I know there was always an argument, but I mean they're the ones where the child doesn't. Do they?
No, they don't have.
A great argument, especially as to whether she was actually pedalling, and she would pedal up hills at least, but it gets them used to the balance and everything.
Exactly.
Again, with that, when we bought what you're going to use it for, and we worked out that a lot of the use we'd get out of it would be not just around Stevenage, but if we went out for a day, so sort of paying a teeny weeny bit extra. Well, it was the second-hand one we got, but getting one that folded so it could go in the car easily. I think we just got so much more use out of it to do that, and it was definitely worth doing. So much of this equipment you feel you don't use for very long, but by sort of using extended family, passing it on to friends, I sort of feel we made good use of what we had and passed it on or got it from cousins, etc., because the same with children's bikes. They seem to be in them for 5 minutes, but the bikes that our children learned on, it worked through the family and then went off to at least another 4 children to learn on.
Yes, the same with ours. I know your children used one of our bikes, didn't they?
Yeah. No, they're both up and going.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually think that my bike seats might have actually gone to the mayor. It's a long, long time ago, but I think that's where they ended up.
Yeah, I know mine all got moved on and passed on to other people, and you find that the cycling mums community does share their equipment, so you don't end up having to spend too much. There's always an initial outlay, but unfortunately children aren't cheap.
No.
Yes, and it's getting things that will sort of last through and be adaptable for lots of different uses. And as I say, that I get the idea of getting something that we could pop in the car, that we could take away, meant that we sort of just got so much more use. Cycle paths are great, but when we went to holiday, I remember going to Norfolk. We always used to go seaside in Norfolk, and then suddenly discovering that just inland they had a whole network of quiet lanes. So again, it was just like Stevenage, where the rules walkers and pedestrians and horse riders had priority. So again, a really, really safe place to just get the children out and get them enjoying somewhere different. Always just to make sure that they had that it was fun. And I think when they were sitting on the bike seats, one thing that was important to remember is that they weren't actually getting the exercise. They might go to sleep, but they weren't getting the exercise. So to sort of make them enjoy it as well, always go somewhere where they can run around, go to a play park, something that they would enjoy. So they got the ride, but also, felt that they were doing something as well. And there was probably a little period where we didn't cycle as much because with 3 children, it was actually quite to juggle everything. And what we did then, we used to do a lot of walking, which meant they got used to the idea of exercise as something fun you would do, to go places, look at different things. And it meant once they did get back on their bikes, they had plenty of stamina and enjoyed what we were doing. And so, it is very much, if you like, child-led, according to what they were wanting to do. Not forced.
Very much so,
despite the fact that we were always very, keen cyclists ourselves. We adapted what we were doing to the sort of age of our children.
Yeah, I know we used to do a lot of things like take a ride to a cafe or to a play park or somewhere where there's a steam train and things like that, where there's a reason for the child to actually go for the ride.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they do get a bit negative.
I have a son who is 25 today, and he would cycle anywhere on the promise of lemon drizzle cake.
Yes. It was chocolate cake in our family, but yes.
But it was, and it's break it down in small bites, because it's almost like the cycling equivalent of "Are we nearly there yet?" That we know our route, we know where we're going, but it's just breaking it into, okay, you go up and wait for us at the top of the hill. It's much nicer for a child to sort of go up on the cycle path, Grizzly Way or wherever. Go, you go and meet us up at the top of that hill. Go up the hill. You can see there's no traffic on the way. Wait for me there. They somehow, the energy comes from somewhere. They have a lot more energy if they're in front, and we can see where they are rather than trailing behind, thinking, oh goodness me, when's this going to end? And it's like anything, isn't it, with children? If it's that's where I think that all the people I talked to, I don't know whether you mentioned the treasure hunt yet, that was brilliant. And doing that in little bites with the children, when we were doing it, we saw so many families out and about enjoying doing that.
That's
in little
true.
bites, having a reason to be looking at things, stopping, going and having a look at the clue, things like that. Just made it all fun. And, you know, the routes, sharing the maps. I'm sure you've spoken about the family routes, sharing those maps, seeing where they're going to some familiar places. In Stevenage, what's quite fun is sometimes you can go on cycleways and suddenly you appear somewhere that you don't expect to have appeared. You should have just gone to it in a different direction. I find that interesting when I'm leading some of the rides I do on the cycle paths. People are surprised, oh, are we here? I didn't know we were here. I didn't know this cycleway led there. Get to know those cycleways. You've just got an infinite number of routes you can take children on.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jill. That's been brilliant.
Okay. My last thing I will say is having cycled with children a lot, the fact that when they grow up, they think of bicycles as a natural form of transport, and the fact that my daughter cycles to work in a car factory, I think is brilliant. That's born and bred in Stevenage, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah.
She's moved away.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You just kind of reminded me that you know, when you've got a small child on the back, you can be working quite hard, and they're sitting there. Now, we've had these strange 30-degree days recently, but it's just a little tip that once we go into autumn, the child can get quite cold, so you need those extra layers. One of the other things I remember, and it's not a cause for concern at all, because the child's strapped in really, really well, but the first time my son went to sleep sitting behind me, your centre of gravity suddenly shifts, which is quite strange the first time. You actually get used to it.
Yeah. My youngest used to enjoy doing that deliberately. We'd be riding on, I had a tandem when he was small, and he'd ride on the back, and he would dive to the side to see what was happening in front of him. But unfortunately, the effect of that is to turn the bike to whichever side he's leaned rather dramatically, which is okay if you're on a cycle track and there's no bikes around, but it's not so good if you're on a road. So we did have a rule that he wasn't allowed to do that on roads. It didn't always work, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go back to underpass one? How much time have we got?
We've got a little bit. Do you want to finish your discussion about underpass one?
Underpass one, and yeah, how important that was. I mean, strangely, I wasn't around, but this is how the story goes. As the new town was developing, you had the housing areas being built. The first house was 1951, but of course you had the employment areas, noticeably Gunnerswood Road. The problem was that the town was bisected by the Great North Road, the A1, and it was becoming increasingly difficult for people, many of whom, because many people lived and worked in the town, but it's becoming difficult for them to get from home to work, walking or cycling. They had to negotiate the Great North Road. The new town had a visionary chief engineer called Eric Claxton. That's Claxton with an X. And I think he had ambitions about sustainability back in the 1950s. But also the people working there were getting extremely frustrated. So there was a combination of community action and somebody who was kind of willing, if you like, with a slightly open door to make it happen. And back in the 50s, the Stevenage Museum have got pictures of this. There were a series of protests by cyclists walking very, very slowly up the A1. The story is that Eric had to design a service tunnel for things like gas and water and electricity, and deliberately over-engineered it so it was big enough to cycle on. That became Underpass 1 and was the first bit of the Stevenage Cycleway network, which I'd say now is, I don't know, 43 kilometres, 27 miles. You know, it's, and it, of course, apart from the purpose-built stuff, include some of the lanes that used to be, like the top end of Sish Lane, for example, and things like that. So that's the story of Underpass 1. It was a combination of community action.
And it's worth noting that Underpass 1 is, of course, included in the Heritage Trail, which is, I presume that Stevenage Council are going to disseminate that through their channels, but Monday night's ride that I'm leading is going along that particular trail.
And the Heritage Ride leaflet includes a picture of Underpass 1.
It does indeed,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
So yeah. And Jill mentioned briefly our treasure hunt, which is available online.
Yeah, it's another virtual
Another virtual activity, and again you'll be able to find that from stevenagectc.org.uk or our Cycling UK Stevenage Facebook page. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that we are partway through a transition from one branding to another, hence we still have the stevenagectc.co.uk website, even though it should really now .org.uk, and it should really be Cycling UK Stevenage. We'll get there.
I mean,
probably
the
next
rules
year.
sorts of way. If all else fails, go to cyclinguk.org
and look
then
for us.
search on local rides, and you'll find us.
There's lots of links to us. We're all over the place. Okay, so that's the treasure hunt. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
Well, I mean, other people might have switched on that weren't here at just after 11 o'clock. So perhaps we can just sort of remind people that between Cycling UK and the other cycling groups in the town, there are dozens of opportunities, either actually or virtually,